Okay, great. All right, let's get going then. All right, welcome everyone, and glad you are here. We're going to talk about interviewing today. And this is obviously a really important topic at this time. Whether there was COVID or no COVID, this would still be an important topic at this time because many of you are about to graduate, you're looking for jobs, you're needing to interview, and if any of you were able to join some of the other workshops that we've put on, one of the basic things that you could really be doing for yourself to help yourself throughout this whole COVID issue is to fine-tune and perfect all of your basic skills. Those basics would categorize in interviewing, resume, get that LinkedIn together, really have those basic, those networking skills. You know what you're doing. Make sure that those are really, really good. So this is a great webinar for you to jump on to learn these things. Okay, so let's get moving. I want you to think about a time, and obviously we're not going to have a chat right now, but I want you to think about a time when you had your last job interview. Maybe it was for a part-time job, maybe it was for a full-time job, maybe it was for an internship. I want you to think about, was it good or bad? And really reflect on maybe the reasons for both, because a lot of times the answers are really truly within ourselves, and we know why maybe an interview didn't go so well. And then we also know why we did pretty well. And so you want to reflect and do well with that. Okay. All right. So this is the biggest question, and this is the biggest answer to the entire piece of what is the factor for interview success. And it's really one big thing and then a trickling of many things beyond that. And that thing is definitely preparation, hands down. When you think of the funny slogan for real estate, location, 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 this is the preparation, preparation, preparation. So it's really all about how you prepare. And a good interviewer can see right through when somebody is not prepared. So it's very important to make sure that you've got that piece done. And if you go back to controlling what you can control in your life, that is something that will be really important, because if you can control anything, you can control how much you prepare. So then the next big question is, why the interview? Why do we even have to do this? You know, sometimes it seems daunting. I love this funny ad or a cartoon about IKEA, right? So you have to put all your stuff together and he wants you to have a seat. So that's part of the interview. You never know what's going to be part of the interview. So you want to think about that. But really, what is the most important piece about the interviewer is they're checking out you for cultural fit, but you're also checking out them to see if you want to work there and if this is a good fit for you. So you almost have to think of it like a dating analogy a little bit. Like, do I like them as much as they like me? Do we like each other? Is this a one-way street? Who's going to benefit here? So you really want to think about, is this a good fit for you as well? Okay, an example of an interview timeline for those of you who are really new to this process. It starts with that research part. You need to tailor your materials, and then you have to actually submit something. Then they may call you for that first round of interviews, and those can typically be on the phone, they can be on video chat, and it's called a screening interview. And they're trying to decide, do we want to take this up a notch and spend more time with this person? After that first round, no matter what kind of a format it is in, you always send a thank you email to the group that you were able to see. Then generally that second round moves to an on-campus, a live, an in the office kind of an interview. During this COVID time, they may do more interviews, but they may all be video chat or some other sort of a Zoom call or something like that. But once this is kind of over, you should be expected to go into the place, because this is also a good tester for you to see, do I like this atmosphere? Do I like this? Because you're probably still checking them out at that time too. Afterwards, you would go back and write a second thank you note. An email is usually the best route to do it. If you've interviewed with multiple people, I personally recommend that you send separate thank you emails to each person and don't put exactly the same content, shift it up a little bit, try to make it unique to the person you spoke to. Then they'll go back and they'll start thinking about who they want, and they may do some reference checks. So if you're good friends with some of your references, they may call you and say, you know, so-and-so called me. Maybe they're getting close to offering you a job. And then it will move into that offer and negotiation stage. So let's talk a little bit about the types of interviews. So again, some of you this is very new for you. And so you want to really pay attention to how this works. So in person, obviously, they've got the one-on-one, your traditional interview with another person. Then you may have a group interview. And that is where actually several people are going for the same job. So maybe there's 10 nursing positions open. And so 5 nurses may be in a group interview, and they're all interviewing you at the same time. But there's a potential that actually you all could get an offer, or maybe none of you could get an offer. So sometimes it's a little bit of a competitive nature, and other times it's not, but they want to see how you interact. And then sometimes it's also for time for them. They're trying to whittle down how much time it takes to do this. Then there's a panel interview, and that's when you might walk into a conference room and there's 4 people lined up on the other side of the table, and you're sitting there and you've got to kind of ping pong against all the people that are asking you questions. Those can be a little bit more nerve-wracking at times, but they're just as easy as the one-on-one, because you really just dial in and focus on each person and answer the questions like you normally would. And then there's the lunch interview. The number one thing to remember with this is you are not there to eat. This is not about having food for you. This is about selling yourself and doing the interview for you. So best recommendation there is follow the lead of the interviewer in terms of what they order, and don't stress out about eating. When we move into phone interviews, there's a couple things to remember. It's really important that you have all of your materials in front of you, because that's the benefit of having the phone interview. You can utilize that stuff, and you can look at the notes, and you can reference things. So make sure you do that. Make sure that you've got good reception. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a phone interview and something wasn't right, and it was really frustrating because I felt like I could hardly hear the person. So make sure you're double checking that. And then also turn off your do not disturb, because you don't want to be bombarded by text messages or anything else while you're interviewing. And finally, make sure that you smile. You can actually tell when somebody smiles over the phone. So that's really important to make sure that you are doing that. Then, of course, we have our video chat version. We have Skype, we have Zoom, and we have all these things that have come out especially since COVID has happened. And you want to make sure that you're paying attention to your background. As you can see, my background is a virtual background. You can also blur your background. And then you also want to make sure that what's physically going on in your background. Are there people moving around? Are there dogs barking? You want to sort of take down all of the distractors if possible. You definitely want to be fully and professionally dressed. This is an opportunity for you to show that you are prepared and you are ready for what is asked of you. You want to maintain eye contact with the camera. So instead of having the slides over on another screen, which is what I actually have, you want to make sure that you are looking at the camera while you're talking about it. And then again, of course, always smile. That's very, very important. So before the interview, something that you really need to think about in that preparation stage is researching the company. Some of the things that you want to think about are the history, the mission and vision. You may want to look up their press releases. You want to see what is their latest and greatest. How do you do that? Well, not only their website, but you can go to glassdoor.com. Glassdoor is where employees are speaking about their own companies. And then you also want to check out LinkedIn and the rest of the social media for the company. So LinkedIn is wonderful to see more information about the company you're interviewing with. But if you happen to know the person you're interviewing with, you can look up his or her profile and get a good sense of their background and see if there's anything that you are connected to them by. Say you're both marathon runners, or you're both volunteer for the same humane society, who knows? But there's a connection there, and you can talk about that in the interview. Okay, so then in the preparation mode, you are going back to that job description. Hopefully you saved it or you printed it and you have a copy of it, because sometimes it disappears from the internet. So you definitely want to make sure you've pulled that off after you've applied. But you want to analyze that job description again. You want to go back and you want to circle, you want to highlight all of the key skills that they're talking about. So you think about those key skills. Then you want to make sure that you're pulling up stories and examples that illustrate that you have those key skills. So you're thinking, gosh, I don't really get it. How do I actually prepare besides researching and then analyzing? How do I do that? Well, first of all, you have to think of the stories ahead of time. That's really important. So you want to connect those that you can highlight. They highlight your strengths and skills and accomplishments in relation to that job. So make sure, again, that it's very relevant. They need to be connecting to what the employer is seeking. Also, if you need it, I strongly recommend for those that are new at this and that are actually feeling quite nervous, write out some answers to the common questions that are asked and think it through. Think through, how do you want this to work? This is the opportunity for you to really prepare ahead of time. And then finally, practice, okay? It's probably not good enough just to write out stories or to think about stories, but it's also that next step of practicing. Maybe you can practice with a friend. We do mock interviews through the Career Development Services Office. You can schedule something like that. And we also have another program where we're connecting you to employers to do a mock interview. And that's, again, another practice interview option for you. Okay, so the interview day has come. Now, how do we go about this day? Well, first of all, hopefully you know where that location is, and either you've given yourself plenty of time to get there, or maybe you've even done a drive-by the day before, depending on maybe how tricky it is. You want to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early, but I wouldn't recommend tons more earlier than that, because it sort of throws everybody off if you show up a half hour early. Definitely come prepared with multiple copies of your resume and a reference list. So this is really important when you think about, you could be in a one-on-one interview and then they say, hey, you know what? We really like you and our CEO happens to be here this week. Let's bring you in. And you all of a sudden are thrown into that conference room with a small panel of people, and you can then pull out your copies of your resume and have it just the way you want on nice paper, ready to go. At the end of that day, they may even ask you, do you have a reference list for us? Well, you can pull that out as well and give them a paper version. You also want to bring a pad folio, and that is like a leather or a pleather notebook with a pad of paper on the one side and then a folder on the other side. So that's where all your resumes and your references will go. And then on the notepad side, you can write out your notes. You can write out the information, the questions that you want to ask employers at the end. Then you don't have to remember them. And then you can also take notes during the interview if you need to quick jot something down about something you and the interviewer talked about. You definitely want to be yourself. You definitely want to think about work samples or a portfolio. That is something where if you can show your writing skills, or maybe you are in advertising and marketing and you've got flyers or promotional materials, you can bring something like that. And then you want to look sharp and be sharp, okay? So here's what the interviewer's goals are. So they're thinking to themselves, why are you here? What can you possibly do for us? What kind of a person are you? Which in other words is, can I eat lunch with you every day? Can I go on a conference with you? Are you going to be a good team member? Am I going to be able to trust you? They're looking at how are you unique, and then can I afford you? Can I afford you is probably the least important at this point. But moving forward, these are the things that they're thinking about. They're thinking about cultural fit in addition to the skill sets. Then there's you. Remember, this is a dating scenario. You have that opportunity to investigate them and vet them as much as they're vetting you. So you want to know, what does this job involve? I've strongly encouraged students over time to make sure that you understand, what is the day in and day out. There's been a couple of jobs where students have gotten caught in a cold calling kind of a role where they didn't understand that in the interview, but if they would have asked a lot more deeper questions, they probably would have understood that going into it. So definitely making sure you understand that. You want to obviously know what the skills are and what kind of people the cultural is for you. Is this a good cultural fit with you? Do you want to eat lunch with these people every day? And then you want to make sure that you are being appreciated for your uniqueness throughout that process as well. Okay, so more tips. You definitely want to keep your answers direct and concise. Don't talk too much or prolong the interview. If you know you're kind of a natural talker, try to take it down a notch, just knowing how you are. If you actually know that you're not a natural talker and maybe you have always needed to talk a little bit more, then know that you need to sort of push yourself a little bit more to have it be a little bit more fluid conversation. Obviously, remain positive when answering questions. Make sure you're not blaming old employers, old bosses. You really want to be tactful. And if it was a bad situation that you happened to be in, or you had a really bad boss, you know, you really can just sort of gloss over it and say, you know, I just needed a new challenge and I was ready to move on. My time there, I was finished. That's okay. It's not a big deal. And you can kind of keep moving on. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that because then it starts to show off some red flags. You definitely don't want to inquire about salary or benefits until an offer has been made. Depending on the level of the position, sometimes you can get that information from recruiters ahead of time or from websites. They may be able to advertise that, but you don't even really want to talk about that until you have some negotiating power. And that isn't until you have an offer and they want you. And then I always recommend not accepting an offer on the spot. To me, that's always a little bit shady. It's a little bit of a red flag. So you definitely want to make sure that you're saying, I am super excited about the opportunity. I'm going to need 24 hours to think about this. Let me get back to you end of day tomorrow. And that's always very appropriate. So watch the response. If it's not appropriate, then I would probably take that back and think about that as well, if they haven't responded the right way. First impressions, right? Everybody says you can never have a second chance to make a first impression. This is really important. Think about your nonverbal communication. You want to think about your dress. You want to think about that handshake, smile, and an eye contact. You want to stand up straight, have your posture correct, and then make sure that you're not talking too fast, or if maybe you happen to know you mumble a little bit. Make sure that you are trying to enunciate your words and your pace of speech isn't too quick or too slow. Making sure that you're paying attention to all those things. Okay, so the types of interview questions. We're going to walk through some of these so you can get some details. They usually start off with some personal ones. Tell me about yourself, which is kind of the same as why should we hire you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why are you interested in this position and company? It's important to have a good answer for that one. And then what are your long-term goals? We're going to talk about those in detail here. So really, tell me about yourself for the job. You definitely want to make sure you're paying attention to that. So it's definitely a warm-up. This is your first opportunity to sell yourself. It should be short. It should be interesting. This isn't about where you were born, and you don't need to start rattling off everything on your resume, but it's a summary. So think about it like that. It's a sales summary. So you want to use it similar to like the elevator pitch. So you want to show them why you're passionate. You want to see your skill sets and your values. And then you want to definitely show your personality and show who you are. Maybe if you are a humorous person, this would be a good time to add something kind of fun. But you really want to be thinking about this is your introductory sales pitch. So let's move through. What is your biggest strength? Okay, so you definitely want to think strategically. You want to pick the skills that are what the company is looking for. So you could probably talk about a lot of different skills, such as leadership and team building and problem solving and critical thinking and adaptability and all those good things. But I would go back to that job description that we looked at before and identify what they're saying and weave that into your language of what your strengths are. You definitely also want to talk about a strength and then support that strength. So if I say, I'm a leader, I've been the president of the marketing association here on campus for 2 years. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me to hone those leadership skills. You see how I'm supporting what I'm saying. So you don't want to just say a whole bunch of things and list out a bunch of things. Then we have the weakness question, right? This is a big one. So you definitely don't want to divulge a character flaw. I think that that's actually wrong. And you don't want to use questions like perfectionist. But what you want to do is think about what are the things that maybe you don't have going for you yet. I like to call it the elephant in the room. It's sort of that obvious thing that you don't have. Maybe you don't have that internship yet. Maybe you don't have that real world experience. Maybe you're behind in the technology component that they need, but you have all the other pieces. Those are the things to say, I'm behind in this technology piece, but what I've started to do is to teach myself from online programs, and I'm moving quickly towards improving my skill in that area. So you're always showing how you're moving to improve. Okay, the Muse is a really great job search resource. And if you can see the address up here at the top, they have a really cool article called Your Ultimate Guide to Answering the Most Common Interview Questions. And what they do is they keep going through these questions over and over again and giving you the right answers on how to respond to that. You can probably find it by just Googling this article with the Muse, but we also have this exact link in our resources guide for during the coronavirus on our webpage under additional materials, supporting materials, I think it says. So you'll be able to find that whole huge resource under that. So you can access that as well. So then they may move into questions that are about your experience level, your knowledge in the field. So they're gonna be asking things like, what have you learned most about some of the jobs? Describe your job related skills and experience. So those are going to be really important things to think about how that connects. This is when they may get a little more technical. If you are looking to be a teacher, maybe you need to talk more about classroom management. If you're thinking about being a nurse, you may need to talk about some of the details of some of the technical pieces. This is when you need to kind of be ready on your game with the technical side of things. Then they love their favorite ones, the behavioral-based questions, right? It's on the theory of past behavior predicts future behavior. And all the employer really wants is specific stories and examples. And this is when it comes back to that preparation component, right? You need to think about how you can demonstrate all of these different skills and abilities through storytelling. And that's going to be telling things that have happened in your past. And generally, you want to go back to your most important academic experiences and your internships and your important relevant job experiences to illustrate these skills. And you definitely want to try the STAR method. What is the STAR method, you say? Here it is. Okay, it's pretty basic, but it's wonderful to keep you on task. Again, for those that don't talk enough, this helps keep you moving. For those that talk too much, this helps keep you contained. So if you stay in that STAR method, you will answer questions the way most employers are anticipating that you'll ask them. So let's take a look at the slide here. Situation is all about the background. So they're telling where are we, what's going on, what's happening. The task is definitely that challenge, that problem comes up, and we're trying to, it'll be where you're going to actually make some sort of decision or change about it. Then you move into the action. This is when you focus on those action verb statements of what did you do? Like we solved, I calculated, and you're talking through that. And then you never want to forget the result. I hear results drop off quite a bit when I do mock interviews, but you definitely want to show that full cycle of the whole story of what happened at the end. My boss was really excited. I saved the company money. I was able to make that sale, whatever it might be, and really show that end benefit. Okay, let's show an example of how to use the STAR method in a behavioral question. So tell me about a time when you had a goal in front of you and an obstacle came in your path. How did you creatively reach your goal? Well, situation. I was on the Student Marketing Association committee planning for the annual fundraiser. Pretty simple. The task, my goal was to raise $2,000. The planning was going smoothly, but our headlining band canceled. Gosh, okay, that's not good. So the action, right? I brought my committee together and we brainstormed. We decided to reach out to the music department to see if there were any resources and anyone we could help. So those are some great action verbs right there. As a result, the music department came through. There was a brand new band. They played for us. It was a success, and we made more money than we expected. Done. Perfect STAR answer, right? You have a lot of information, but you stayed on task, and you showed exactly how to answer that. So that's pretty basic STAR. Okay, so you may be getting through that interview and they say near the end, is there anything I haven't asked you about yourself that you would like to share? Always answer this, okay? Because this is your last sales pitch. This is your last opportunity to maybe summarize everything that you've said already. Why are you the best person for the job? Maybe you are telling them how excited you are for this opportunity and why you're qualified. So this is your last sell, and absolutely take advantage of it. Then they may ask, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions for me? They say. You always want to ask something, okay? So if somebody says, nope, done, then the employer is like, what? How can you possibly be done? We barely know each other. There's got to be plenty of things you have to ask me. So you definitely want to think about, do I understand what that job entails? Do I understand what I will be doing most of the day, every day, and how this comes together? So clarify those things. And then you definitely can make sure that you clarify what are the next steps. Is there a next interview? Do I need to be prepared for a presentation? What's happening in the interview? And clarify how long that process will take. So what is the rest of the process? Oh, there's 3 more interviews. That's interesting. Okay, then you can have that information and be prepared. So this is also a great time when you go back to that Padfolio that I told you to get, is you can write out some good questions. You know, things that are high value questions. Things like, what's the largest problem facing your staff that I would be able to help you solve in this position? What would be considered a successful first year in this position? What are the most challenging parts of this position and what are the most rewarding parts of it? What kind of professional development opportunities are available for me? Can you tell me about a team I'll be working in? And on and on. So those are the things that you can write out and have ready, because then when you open it up and you say, yes, actually I do, they're kind of like, oh, wow, she's prepared. She's actually thought this through. She's serious about this role. This is exciting. Okay, I want to review quickly some illegal or inappropriate questions that interviewers may ask you and give you a little tip on how to answer them. So they may say, what's your current salary? Which is completely irrelevant and not having anything to do with the new role. But this is a great way for you to answer it. You can say something like this. Before discussing any salary, I'd really like to learn more about what this role entails. I've done a lot of research on your company, and I'm certain if it's the right fit, we'll be able to agree on a number that's fair and competitive to both parties, right? So then you're not naming any kind of a number. Okay, are you planning on having any children? That's totally illegal and inappropriate. So a great way to answer that is to kind of just blow over it and sidestep it, and meaning not confront it is what I'm saying. So you can say something like, you know, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm very interested in the career paths at your company. Can you tell me more about that? So you're diverting it away from what that was. And then finally, this would be, say, something asked to a woman. How would you handle managing a team of all men, say, to a woman? So a gender biased question. Again, sort of divert the piece, drop that last portion, and just focus on your skills, right? So instead say, I'm very comfortable in a management role. In fact, my last position, the department and I led exceeded its annual sales goals for 3 years straight. So again, focus on that leadership portion and forget about what they're talking about and don't address it right there and then. Just some really great sort of PC ways of answering those. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the importance of body language, right? So all nonverbal skills are half or actually 3/4 of the battle. So you really want to make sure that you are displaying the right information. And then make sure that you're thinking about the cultural variations when it comes to that. I've got a really great video that I want to play for this one.
Have you been to an interview recently, been perfectly qualified for the role, you've answered all the questions correctly, but still been rejected? Well, the answer could lie in your body language. Recent studies suggest that only 7% of your communication are the actual words you say. 38% are certain vocal elements like your intonation, but 55% is your nonverbal. Things like your facial expression, your gestures, your posture. So this video is going to look at the messages you've been sending out with your body language and how to tweak those to make sure you're sending out all the right signals at your next interview. So think about your body posture. A very natural thing for people to do is to slouch in the chair or fold their arms. And this looks like you're making yourself smaller, wrapping yourself up. And the signal you're giving off to the interviewer is that you're defensive or nervous. Instead, open up your body. Don't cross your legs or fold your arms, but engage slightly forward from the waist. And this will give the appearance to the interviewer that you're interested. If you're jiggling about a lot in the chair, keeping changing your body posture, or you're playing with the button on your shirt or the ring or other objects, you're going to appear anxious and nervous. And certainly the interviewer is going to be less inclined to have confidence in you. So a really good tip is to first slow your breathing down. This will slow your heart rate and make you feel less nervy. Keep your hand gestures steady and only to emphasize a point. Palm up.
Sorry.
An effective technique, but it needs to be done very subtly. Mirroring hand movements or positive gestures, waiting 10 seconds though before you do it yourself. You can also mirror your speech. So their vocabulary, their jargon, the rate or volume of their speech. People trust those that are similar to themselves. So this makes the interviewer feel at ease, and you're more likely to build rapport with them. This is so important. Interviewees often avoid the gaze of the interviewer or they look down. But by looking at the interviewer's eyes, you're asserting your confidence, your trustworthiness. Instead of staring at the interviewer, alternate your gaze between the left eye, the right eye, the mouth, maybe every 3 seconds, just enough to see the color of the interviewer's eyes. For panel interviews, make sure you look at everybody, but specifically focus your attention on the person who's asking you the question or is speaking at the time. To avoid line signals, the main rule is avoid touching your face. So especially your nose, your mouth, your ears, your sideburns. These are all signs that will suggest to your interviewer that you're being dishonest with the way that you're answering their questions. So the handshake is an obvious one, but so many people get this wrong. It's the unspoken word that initiates conversation in any social or professional get-together. Too firm, and you'll seem too dominant. Too weak, and you'll seem underconfident. Instead, always initiate the handshake, match the interviewer's grip, apply the 1-2 second rule, smile, and repeat their name. By putting these body language tips into practice, you'll be giving off the right impression at your next interview. Now, all you need to worry about is what you're actually going to say.
Okay. I like that video. It's very to the point. It's important to remember your body language. Okay, let's talk about post-interview. This is the time when you need to send thank you notes and emails. You definitely want to be brief and friendly, and you want to follow up as well. This is the time when I usually say, if they say, gosh, we'll get back to you by next Friday, then when next Friday comes and goes and you haven't heard from anybody, I would say it's appropriate to say the following Tuesday or Wednesday to make a phone call to just say, hey, I'm just following up. I'm really excited still about the role, because sometimes they are just moving through the process and they get delayed. Maybe somebody called in sick. Maybe they couldn't get a signature on something. There's lots of reasons why they can't live up to the time frame that they said for you. So don't stress out entirely about it, but it is okay to follow up. And then this is when you should be doing some serious salary negotiation research. You want to understand how much that position really is worth and what the market range is for that role. I will tell you, most jobs in Southwest Florida for a bachelor's level person coming right out of school, and we take this all from our senior survey information, it's anywhere between $36,000 and about $43,000 a year. So that's going to be the average sort of range for most jobs right out with a bachelor's degree in Southwest Florida. Here's a quick sample of a thank you email. You can kind of get a good idea if you want to quick skim this and see. It doesn't have to be extremely wordy, but you're just quickly summarizing why you're excited about them and why you wanted to go on board with them. Okay, then it moves into the offer negotiation stage. So when you're negotiating, you definitely want to remember you can't negotiate until you have an offer, but assuming that they want you and they want you nice and they want you bad enough, then they might be willing to negotiate a little bit more. So the things that you can negotiate on are this list of things. You want to remember too, though, that sometimes it's more of a package offer. So maybe your salary isn't as high, but you're going to be able to get tuition reimbursement and you're thinking, I'm going to go back for that master's program a little bit later. Maybe they'll let me work from home a little bit. Maybe they have some professional development. I can get some certifications while I'm working there, and it'll all kind of work itself out. So make sure that you're not focused entirely on that salary. I'm going to give you some dress for success do's and don'ts, and this is really important because we see this quite a bit with our FGCU students. Some of the things for women is making sure that that skirt is nice and long, at least knee length. And skirts are not required. You can also wear dress pants, but I would recommend dark shoes, closed-toed shoes, and very moderate jewelry, and something underneath that is really simple. So the don'ts are for the women is something that's too chunky, bright colors aren't quite appropriate, capris are definitely too casual, and then open-toed shoes aren't appropriate for the interview. This might be better for a business casual workwear. Now, popping over to the men, we want to make sure that the biggest thing is that facial hair needs to be neat and trimmed. That's probably a big turnoff to a lot of employers, and making sure that that looks okay. A full suit is appropriate. You definitely don't want to go in too casual. This guy is, again, he's more of a business casual, but this is not interviewing attire. This is. Another thing that we see with some gentlemen is they forget to shine their shoes. They're like all scuffy. And then we also sometimes see gentlemen have way too much cologne or something on, and then they're like a big dust ball of cologne. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those things. Okay. You didn't know you were going to get that bonus dress for success, right? Okay, so now we're at the question part. And I will switch this out and stop the share so that we can come back to the group meeting. All right.
Thanks, Rose. Do we have any questions out there? You can type them in the chat if you don't want to talk, or you can go ahead and start asking questions.
You're welcome, Jessica. I think it's just really important to think about that big picture and knowing that you want to be yourself. You want to make it a good fit. If you go in there prepared, then if they don't pick you, then you really don't want to be with them. Look at it that way. There's a lot of other fish in the sea, and that includes employers. And sometimes it feels harder to know that maybe you didn't get a job, but this is the best time to be thinking about that you have options as much as them.
Do you have a new question? Is a new one there from Rachel? Can you?
Okay, good. I see some people saying they're going to ask about how their company handles COVID crisis during the interview. Is this appropriate? Absolutely. You need to know what you're getting into, and you need to know how they're doing that. You need to know, am I going to be onboarded in a remote situation? If that's so, are they going to help you with computers? Are they going to help you with other things and connecting? There's a lot of unknowns, especially if this is a first job for you right out of college. You definitely want to understand what's happening. So that's a great question, Rachel, because you definitely need to understand what their timeline is, maybe what their plans are. And you want to keep yourself safe too, because if they're all going into the office, you also want to know like what kinds of safety measures are they putting into place to keep everyone healthy. So it's totally appropriate. Good, great question.
We have a couple more there, Rose, for you.
Perfect. Excuse me. Ashrith, there's some jobs that don't require an interview like the Indeed position I got an email from, and they just want an application. That is a scam, Ashrith. When it seems too good to be true, it probably is, okay? So that Indeed job, we just saw that come through earlier today and last night. Mary's been dealing with a lot of these scammers. They're pretty vicious right now. So that one definitely is a scam. So make sure that you're paying attention to some of those. We're trying to weed all those out, but they're just getting into our system, and it's very difficult. So good call, Ashrith. Okay, Lauren, I was recently told that a thank you note tends to be better than an email. Is there a good way to determine this when a handwritten note versus an email? That is a great question too, Lauren. So my number one rule is if you have terrible handwriting, don't ever handwrite a letter, okay? Because I've gotten them before and it looks like a 3-year-old has written something. And I'm like, wow, okay, but great idea. So that's my number one. My number two is you need to be very aware of the time frame. So if they're near the end of their interview cycle and you say, okay, what are the next steps? And they say, well, actually, you are one of our last people. We're going to kind of confer this in the next couple days, and then we're going to reach out with offers. Well, you don't have time for real mail, obviously. So you want to make sure you get that out in email. If they say, oh gosh, you're our first one, we've got 3 more weeks to go. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, 3 weeks. So you could handwrite one. It's a nice touch, and it could be something where it'll end up in their mailbox in another couple weeks. During this whole COVID, I would not send any snail mail. I would just go all email, because people are probably getting their snail mail building up in their office if they're not even in there. I mean, we haven't been to our office in over a month. So we could have a lot of snail mail building up that's just being held in storage that we don't even get to see. So at this point, I would go with the email for right now. Good question, Lauren. Okay, Jessica, about our weaknesses, is it better to talk about something not related to their required skills? That's a good question. I would probably try to stay away from that personal character flaw and try to focus on something that you have already been starting to correct in terms of a technology piece, or maybe it's an experience piece. So, hey, I don't have enough experience in the professional world, but I did this service learning experience where I was able to be in an office setting, and that was good for me. And you can kind of show the background of how you're moving in the direction to getting what you want. I hope that helps, Jessica. Okay, Cassie, you mentioned that when considering an offer, be open-minded and look at the total package. If the employer can't meet you with the pay, is it appropriate to negotiate other things like vacation, tuition, benefits, etc.? go for it. Yes. If you can try to negotiate that, absolutely. Depending on the role, they may be very rigid. Like if you came to work at FGCU, there's really not any negotiating in any of those kinds of things. But other private companies, they may have a lot more negotiating power. You also want to think, like I said, open-minded, is that if you're thinking you've wanted to go back and get a master's degree in the next couple of years anyway, a master's degree costs a lot of money. And so if they've got a tuition reimbursement program, add that whole component onto the top of your salary. And if your salary isn't as high as you want, but they're going to end up paying for your entire master's program, that's a really big package and a big picture. So you want to stay, that's the open-minded part that I'm saying, is like, think about it. And if it's important for you to maybe have flex time and work one day at home, those are the kinds of things they may be able to work out with you. So pay attention to those. Yes, good question, Cassie. Okay, so Ashrith, should I only accept jobs that I send a resume and covers to and also do interviews with them and those that are good ones to join in? And you're kind of addressing staying away from scammers. Is that what you mean? Or yes. I would probably pay attention to, if you've sent a resume and cover letter and they call you for an interview, then yes, those are a little bit more legit. Exactly. That's a great way to sort of put up those boundaries and feel a little safer. Good question. Okay. All right. Anything else? Good questions, you guys.
Yeah, we had some good questions today.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. Anybody else have any last minute thoughts or questions that you would like to ask Rose?
I just want to remind everybody to continue to go to our website. We have revamped it with all of our virtual services. There's now 6 different bubbles that you can go into, and I have some fantastic resources put up there in the additional materials, or I think it's called supporting materials, right, Mary? There's a resume sample where you can rework your skill sets. And then there is a resources handout with links directly in that to help you walk through some different areas. So please make sure you're paying attention to those. You can also go back and rewatch some of those employer information sessions, which are great ones to watch, because if you're interested in any of those companies. And then check back, because we're going to have more this summer, right, Mary?
We are, and we have LinkedIn tomorrow afternoon.
Yep.
And pivoting skills, which is a really good one that we're redoing. Rose did it a week and a half ago. If you're in a path and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm in hospitality, I'm never going to get a job now for the next few months. What else can I do with that degree? So that's a great one. She has some great thoughts in that presentation, so you should check that one out as well.
Yep. All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Please make sure you book an appointment with one of our career advisors if you want more one-on-one help. Okay? Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.